This episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast is brought to you by MEGA, your medical indemnity partner. Whether you're starting out in your career or have decades of experience, MEGA helps you thrive with support that goes beyond insurance. Enjoy travel benefits like complimentary travel insurance and Qantas points on your membership, plus education, medico-legal support, access to career coaching and wellbeing resources. Visit mega.com.au to learn more. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au.
Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Joe Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
Hello and welcome back to the Burnout Recovery Podcast. I'm Dr. Joe Braid and I'm so glad you're here with me today. Whether you're listening during your commute, maybe on your holiday break, on a break between patients, or perhaps while you're trying to decompress after a particularly challenging shift, I want you to know that this conversation is for you. Today I want to share something deeply personal with you, a story about resilience, communication, and how sometimes our greatest learning moments come wrapped in our most uncomfortable experiences. This is episode 164, and today we're talking about the patient complaint that taught me about resilience. You know, there's something uniquely vulnerable about walking into a clinical situation where you know there's already tension in the air. As healthcare professionals, we've all been there. That moment when you're briefed about a, inverted commas, difficult patient or family, and you feel your shoulders tense up before you've even stepped through the door. Let me take you back to a locum shift I picked up several months ago. I was covering a ward where another doctor had been managing the patients, and during handover, I was informed about one particular patient whose family were, and I quote, not happy with care and plans going forward. The communication had been described as very difficult. Now, I want to pause here because I think this is where many of us can make our first mistake. When we hear these warnings, our natural response is often defensive preparation. We armor up, expecting conflict. But what I've learned, and what research in healthcare communication consistently shows us, is that this defensive stance can actually perpetuate the very problems we're trying to avoid. Dr. Atul Gawande, in his work on surgical communication, talks about how our preconceptions shape our interactions more than we realize. When we expect difficulty, we often unconsciously create the conditions for it. So there I was, walking towards this patient's room, very conscious of this history. And I'll be honest with you, my heart rate was elevated. I was mentally rehearsing potential difficult conversations. But then I stopped myself and asked, what if I approached this differently? Instead of walking in with the weight of previous interactions, I decided to start fresh. I introduced myself not as the doctor who was taking over from someone else, but simply as Dr. Braid, here to understand their concerns and work together on the best path forward. And you know what happened? Within the first 5 minutes of our conversation, I learned more about this patient and their healthcare journey than I had seen documented in recent notes for the patient. The family wasn't difficult. They were scared, they were frustrated, and they felt unheard. And there's a really big difference in that. This experience relates to research by Dr. Wendy Levinson, who studied malpractice claims and found that patients who sue their doctors aren't necessarily those who received the worst care, but often those who felt their doctors didn't listen to them or didn't care about them as people. So the family shared with me their fears about the treatment plan, their confusion about conflicting information they'd received, and their deep love for their family member who was struggling. And once I truly listened, not just to respond, but to understand, everything changed. We developed what I can only describe as a strong working relationship. Communication became clear and informed. They trusted me with their concerns, and I was able to address them directly. And more importantly, I really learnt from this family. They taught me things about how their loved one was functioning in the community and what were the important goals to them. And that really helped me reframe how I approached their ongoing care plan. Here's what I want you to really hear. This wasn't about me being a better doctor than my colleague at all. This was about the power of a fresh perspective and the resilience that comes from choosing curiosity over defensiveness. Resilience, you see, isn't just bouncing back from difficult situations. Dr. Anne Maston's research on resilience shows us that it's often about our ability to adapt, to find new ways of approaching challenges, and to maintain our core values even when the circumstances are tough. In healthcare, we often think resilience means toughening up, developing a thicker skin. But what I learned that day is that sometimes resilience looks like vulnerability, like admitting you don't have all the answers and being willing to learn from the people you're caring for. That complaint wasn't about me, but it could have defined my entire interaction with this family. Instead, I chose to see it as information not about who these people were, but about what they had experienced. And that made all the difference. So this connects to something I see so often in my work with healthcare professionals experiencing burnout. We carry the weight of every difficult interaction, every complaint, every moment when we feel we've fallen short, we're running late, we're running behind. We carry that weight into the next appointment that we have with the next patient. But what if we could learn to hold these experiences differently? Research by Dr. Kristin Neff on self-compassion shows us that healthcare workers who practice self-compassion are not only more resilient, but also provide better care. When we can approach our mistakes and our challenges with curiosity rather than self-criticism, we create space for growth and learning. And I want to share 3 practical tools that emerged from this experience. Tools that have helped me and the healthcare professionals I work with build resilience in the face of difficult situations. Firstly, practice the fresh eyes approach. When you're briefed about a challenging patient or family, take a moment to consciously set aside those preconceptions. Ask yourself, what would I want to understand about this person if I were meeting them for the first time? This isn't about ignoring important clinical information. It's about approaching the human being in front of you with openness rather than defensiveness. Second, use what I call curious questions. Instead of asking, "What's the problem here?" try, "Help me understand what's most important to you right now." Instead of, "Why are you upset?" try, "What would help you feel more confident about this plan?" These subtle shifts in language can completely change the dynamic of a conversation. And third, practice complaint reframing. When you encounter criticism or complaints, try to hear them as information about unmet needs rather than personal attacks. This patient's family wasn't difficult. They were advocating for someone they loved who felt vulnerable in the healthcare system. So as I reflect on this experience, I realize it taught me something profound about the nature of resilience in healthcare. We often think resilience is about individual strength, about being tough enough to handle whatever comes our way. But true resilience in healthcare is relational. It's about our ability to connect authentically with the people we serve, even when, especially when, those connections feel challenging. The research backs this up, and studies on healthcare worker well-being consistently show that meaningful patient relationships are one of the strongest protective factors against burnout. So when we feel connected to the people we're caring for, when we remember why we chose this profession, we tap into a source of resilience that no amount of individual coping strategies can match. And here's what I want you to remember. This kind of resilience requires practice. It requires us to be intentional about how we approach difficult situations. It requires us to choose curiosity over defensiveness, connection over protection, learning over knowing. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with some specific action steps and reflective questions. Firstly, identify one difficult patient or family interaction you've been avoiding or dreading. Approach your next interaction with them using the fresh eyes technique we discussed. Secondly, practice one curious question this week. Instead of your usual approach to gathering information, try asking, what would help you feel more confident about this? Or help me understand what's most important to you right now. And thirdly, reframe one complaint or criticism you've received recently. Write it down, then rewrite it as information about an unmet need. And notice how this changes your emotional response to it. Your reflective questions could include, when you think about your most challenging patient interactions, what patterns do you notice in your own responses? How might your preconceptions about difficult patients or families be affecting your ability to connect with them? And thirdly, what would change in your practice if you approached every complaint as valuable information rather than personal criticism? And here's my invitation to you. Share one insight from today's episode with one colleague this week. Maybe it's a story about a time when changing your approach transformed a difficult situation. Maybe it's one of the tools we discussed. The act of sharing not only reinforces your own learning, but might just be exactly what your colleague needs to hear. Remember, resilience in healthcare isn't about becoming invulnerable. It's about staying open, staying curious, and staying connected to the profound privilege of caring for others, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Thank you for being here with me today, and thank you for the work you do, for the lives you touch, and for your commitment to growing and learning even in the midst of challenge. Until next time, be kind to yourselves, and remember, you're not alone in this journey. Ready to take the next step in your burnout recovery journey? Visit drjobraid.com for free resources, all 150 plus podcast episodes, and information about my keynote speaking. Links are in the show notes. Your well-being matters. Protect the asset that is you. Be your best you. Rely on MEGA for your protection and support, serving doctors for over 125 years through insurance, education, medical legal advice, and member benefits designed to help you thrive and succeed. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au.